How do you have a good faith conversation with these people? And watch Michael Knowles as he curls himself into a right-wing pretzel. When the panel started talking about, and I brought up the fact that Donald Trump is attacking judges. He's made a career out of this. If a judge rules against him, Donald Trump attacks the judge, attacks a member of the judge's family. He's known to do this. And with the El Salvador alleged gang members that were deported, he does the same thing, right? He does the exact same thing. So this is a clip where we're talking about that. And I am making the case, which I think is a decent point, which is if a judge rules against Donald Trump, he attacks the judge. And if a judge rules in favor of Donald Trump, it's a positive. And he calls that person great. And then listen to Michael Knowles with his whataboutism bring up something from years ago, and I call it out. Have a listen to this.
I think that's a really good point, Brian, because I think it is the fact that most Americans, when they're told, look, these are pretty bad criminal people, and then when we're chucking them back either to their country or El Salvador, they're probably not going to be too bothered about whether some judge has decided he doesn't think this is particularly due process.
Well, a couple things here, Piers. First of all, they haven't shown direct evidence that these are all gang members. We've heard about tattoos, and we've also heard stories from family members that some of these people have no criminal records, and that one tattoo was a soccer ball, or he was a fan of a soccer team. Everyone is entitled to due process. I want bad people out of this country if they are gang members, just as much as anybody else on this panel. But the fact of the matter is that everybody deserves due process. And every single time a judge rules against Donald Trump is always the guy that attacks the judge personally, attacks the judge's family, for example. And I don't care how much money this judge's wife has donated to a particular party. That is academic to what we are talking about here. Donald Trump does not respect the rule of law. And this judge ruled on this and made an order on this when one of those planes was still grounded. They attack every judge they disagree with personally. And then when a judge rules in their favor, they're brilliant. They're great. He says the same thing about a judge that rules in his favor as he says about Vladimir Putin. Brilliant, smart guy. I mean, I'm just getting sick and tired of this.
Brian, do you remember when the Dobbs decision was leaked, quite contrary to court tradition, and Chuck Schumer, the Democrat leader in the Senate, walked up to the Supreme Court and said, watch out, Justice Kavanaugh, watch out, Justice Gorsuch, you have unleashed the whirlwind. And then a leftist came from California to Washington, D.C. to try to murder Justice Kavanaugh. Could you please spare me the crocodile tears over attacks on judges?
I'll respond to that. Unlike you, Michael, I don't use whataboutism, and I'm willing to go after both sides. I didn't agree with that then.
Sounds like you're
I don't agree with that now. But you notice what Michael, hold on a second. I'm answering your question. You notice what Michael does? I bring up points of Donald Trump attacking a judge, attacking a judge's character, attacking the judge's wife. And Michael starts talking about Chuck Schumer. You see, because Michael is in his right-wing echo chamber bubble, and he can't. Well, why don't you criticize Trump for going after a judge's family then? Why do you have to bring up a Democrat and Chuck Schumer? I agree with you.
Oh, I'm happy to answer
that. Was wrong
I'm happy
also.
To answer that. I'm happy to answer that. President Trump never said you've unleashed the whirlwind right before a left-wing assassin tried to murder Kavanaugh and potentially his whole family. President Trump pointed out that the judge's order was wrong.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace.
What an idiot. You see what Michael Knowles is doing? Do you see what he's doing? Michael Knowles is trying to bring up something from the past, and he's trying to go with this whataboutism stuff. And I even said to him, listen, what Chuck Schumer said about Brett Kavanaugh was wrong. I criticized him then, and it's wrong now. But that's what these right-wing idiots do. Michael Knowles is a right-wing hack. He's an idiot. He can't say what Donald Trump has done is wrong. Every single time I pin them in a corner, it's very easy. Actually, Michael Knowles would probably want him to pin me in a corner, but that's another story for another show. The truth of the matter is that I bring up the fact that Donald Trump is attacking judges and their families. And what does Michael Knowles do? Instead of saying, yeah, you're right, Brian, Donald Trump shouldn't do that. You can disagree with the judge's decision and you can fight it in a courtroom, but you shouldn't be going after them personally. He goes back years to a comment that Chuck Schumer made about Brett Kavanaugh, which, by the way, I also said I disagree with. But you notice how in entire clip, Michael Knowles couldn't call out Donald Trump because he's a right-wing idiot. That's why.